No. Hmm. Torment.
चाहे कभी, अब के वो आए तो इतनी बेदर्दी से जाए नहीं। ये दिल आवारा निकल ही जाता है कहीं, ठहराओ नहीं, I'm gone again, I'm gone again। बातें सबा तो वही है, बस है एक कमी कि अब तेरी जुल्फों को छू के वो मुझसे गुजरती नहीं। बातें सबा तो वही है, बस है एक कमी कि अब तेरी जुल्फों को छू के वो मुझसे गुजरती नहीं। तेरी सादगी के सदके, तेरी आजिज़ी पे मरते, तेरे साए से हो गए हम, तेरे साथ ही तो चलते। सारे गैर मेरे लिए खुश, मेरे अपने मुझसे जलते। लगे साल अब एक पल से, मेरे शोज लगे जल से। रहे वजन मेरे कल्ब पे, बड़े गुनाह मेरे सर थे, पर जिंदगी बस एक रवानी का नाम। मेरे गाने सब जवानी के नाम। नशा है अब तेरे हिजर में जानम, शराब तो अब जैसे पानी का नाम। तन्हाई, तारीकी और तरके ताल्लुक, फिर वही मौत और फिर वही ताबूत। दिल एक शोले की तरह दहकता भी है, दिल परिंदा फजर पे चहकता भी है, बहकता भी है, ये महकता भी है। शराब में घोले तरसा ही है, तू बेपरवाह है, बेफिक्र सा भी है। मैं लिखता हूँ शायरी जिसके लिए, वो पढ़ता भी है और मुकरता भी है। ये दिल बेचारा तसल्ली भी चाहे कभी, अब के वो आए तो इतनी बेदर्दी से जाए नहीं। ये दिल आवारा निकल ही जाता है कहीं, ठहराओ नहीं, I'm gone again, I'm gone again। बातें सबा तो वही है, बस है एक कमी कि अब तेरी जुल्फों को छू के वो मुझसे गुजरती नहीं। बातें सबा तो वही है, बस है एक कमी कि अब तेरी जुल्फों को छू के वो मुझसे गुजरती नहीं। मेरे घर में अब एक कमरा खाली भी है, वहाँ से अब होश हटा दी गई है। एक सफ़े मातम बिछा ली गई है, उस कमरे में अब बस किताबें ही बाकी हैं, अकल वहाँ से उठा ली गई है। नुस्खा इश्क तो सबको चाहिए, नुस्खा दर्द बता दीजिए, जो लिखे हैं ख़त वो जला दीजिए। मुझे हमदर्दियाँ समझ आती नहीं है, जो तुझ पे बीती तू सब पे आया कर, जो मुझ पे बीती वो कोई बात ही नहीं है। जुदाई में भी कुछ वफा के तकाजे के ऐप पे पर्दे उठाते नहीं है। एक यार जिसके घर पे माँ ही नहीं, एक मैं जो घर पे रात था ही नहीं, जो मैसर हो क्यों उसकी चाह ही नहीं। दिल को तसल्ली तो दे, दिल को तसल्ली नहीं, ये धड़कनें लड़खड़ाती हैं, बेतरतीबियाँ हैं बड़ी। तू जब भी मिली बड़ी सर्द सी, दवा है पास हर दर्द की। अगर रॉक्स और थोड़ी सी एनसी, जब तू सोचो में रहती है रेंट फ्री। ये दिल बेचारा तसल्ली भी चाहे कभी, अब के वो आए तो इतनी बेदर्दी से जाए नहीं। ये दिल आवारा निकल ही जाता है कहीं, ठहराओ नहीं, I'm gone again, I'm gone again। बातें सबा तो वही है, बस है एक कमी कि अब तेरी जुल्फों को छू के वो मुझसे गुजरती नहीं। बातें सबा तो वही है, बस है एक कमी कि अब तेरी जुल्फों को छू के वो मुझसे गुजरती नहीं।
Let's get it. Nalle. इतना रो लिया अब गाने सुन के रोना भी नहीं आता। Fuck. चुप होना भी नहीं आता, ऐसी जिंदगी मिली जिसे मैं खोना भी नहीं चाहता। थोड़ी कटी थी भेजी की तो वो सोना भी नहीं चाहता। मेरी खड़ी थी ऐसी की मैंने सोचा भी नहीं ज्यादा। ले ली पहली तो पता चला कि वक्त पे गाड़ा मुझे पैसे से पहले से चढ़े उसी में वो चाड़ा करो कभी तो छापू में तेरे पापा से ज्यादा ये मरे जाए। डूम थ्री है नो नो प्लीज शूट की जिस दिन मैं बैठ जाता लेकिन बस उस दिन ना दी है नहीं सुकून की बड़े दिखना नहीं दूंगा नशा की भी बलौंडे देखेंगे चढ़ा के छोटा मैं तब भी सीधा थोड़ा नहीं बोला किसी को मैंने बलौंडे मिलने को रेडी थे आधा मारा में लोड़ा मुझे चुप रहो कब से किसना हो नहीं पता नहीं तरह क्या तब से लिख रहा हूँ पीछे मुड़े पूरा टप चमक टप मैं खुशता हूँ जो करे नफरत मेरे लंड पे बच जाओ इस साल let's get it on। माँ मेरे खतरदार बात साथ में लाल माँ से साथ
मार दूं चांटा चौकियों मत पहले ही कहा रैप के मैं टेक इंजन का जामा कभी कभी बकचोदी में बीटों की होती हत्या सस्या बस क्या जाना तुझे दूर पर तू थक गया डर गया घर जा नहीं पाया घर क्योंकि भूल गया घर क्या बना रहा है मजबूर सी शक्ल क्या हेटरों ने साली मून दिया कल क्या करे पूरा सीन सीधे मौत की नकल आज टूटेगी गैंग ला मेरे फ्लो का दे हफ्ता मैं कर रहा वसूली तू गिरवी रखे अपना पेन देख अगर होता मैं ज्यादा कमीना तो कहता तुझे गिरवी रख अपनी मैम जाने दे गंदे इरादों ख्यालों से रहता हूँ दूर से रहने की कोशिश कर रहा साफ दिल पर उसका गंदा डेल दे मारा 2 घंटे का सेट बैंगलोर में करे 3 गाने बैक टू बैक -1 पे और फेवरेट चेक शूटिंग खून और मूतिंग बेड ये है पूरी डिसरिस्पेक्ट और ईगो चेक फ्लो बार क्या फील लाइक सो स्टे के पिक तेरे सारे बॉक्सेस पे है कर पे टिक थाम मेरा लंड और इस पे माथा टेक मैं साल लेके चले के देखे सपेरे सपोले सवेरे अंधेरे बतेरे भयानक तो आमद खिजामत यहाँ हम खाते हैं लौड़े वहाँ पक्का मत काम बोले ले तो मैं लाऊं कयामत काम बोले खा जा तो नहीं कोई सलामत बार फॉर बार आके नापने ताकत लेता नहीं कोई 7 साल बिन इजाजत तेरा बाप सीधे मौत
आंखें हुई बंद रातें कांटे बन कटती है फिर मेरी हाँ होते कमरे बंद तो मन से मैं करता बातें तेरी हूँ ना मैं नहीं मैं तेरे लिए काबिल भूला मैं नहीं था तुझसे वाकिफ हूँ ना मैं नहीं मैं तेरे लिए काबिल भूला मैं नहीं था तुझसे वाकिफ अब तो
बच रहे हैं दर्द से और चल रहे हैं जब तक हो चल पाना तू आसमां की पंछी है पानी में और तैरना नहीं आता तो इसमें तेरी क्या गलती दिल पे चोट है सर पे बहुत है पर लड़के सॉर्ट है बस चाहते मोक्ष है मैं कब से लिख लिख दर्द दूर दूर कर फूट फूट रहा बूंद बूंद जमा खून खून खोला कमी महसूस हुई खूब मेरे खून की बस पर यहाँ भी ढूंढ ली छत मुझे देखते जाओ कैसे लगा के मुखौटा मैं रोता हुआ मुस्कुराऊं छोड़ी भी देते नहीं साथ मैं सही में थक चुका हूँ फंस चुका हूँ मर रहा हूँ डर रहा हूँ
हमेशा से मोटो था एक ही कोवर्क जिंदगी ले क्लास वर्सेस एट होम वर्क वर्सेस उन लोगों के जो रहे दो मुंह यहाँ पे है दो सर ओह या थोड़े से वो गॉड थोड़े से लो पर थोड़े से लो गॉड दिए हैं खो पर अब होता है नो थर
तो भी मैं खींचता जाऊं और कब तक जूं ये चल कपट सी जिंदगी में कल सफल नहीं हुआ तो शर्म से मर न जाऊं ये लत कमीनी कब कभी जो हुई थी कम वो झट से वापस आए फिर मैं भी
वापस लौट आया था जहाँ से उसी राह पे फिर चल पड़ा हूँ ऐ जालिम हसीना मैं बस तेरे गम गिन रहा हूँ क्या वाकई में हल है या बस जाया वक्त कर रहा हूँ या मैं पक्का सही हूँ या मैं सही में अंधा हो चुका हूँ
Says on the beat, boy.
अकेला फलक पे जमीन पे उतार दो आसाइश ज्यादा है आजमाइश उधार दो सोबतों में बिगड़ गया हूँ सुधार दो पर मुझे जीना ही नहीं है मुझे मार दो नजर बंद आस पास दायरे हैं गाने पीट के बिना फकत मुशायरे थे क्या फौत हो गई मेरी हमदर्दी कहीं सब खत्म क्या अब क्या मेरी कोई जिंदगी नहीं पैसे हैं पर शौक उसकी मजबूरी है मैंने खुद ने ऐसी जिंदगी कबूली है अब कमरे में घड़ी की जगह सूली है दफन कर दिया है दिल इतना जरूरी है सवाल ये है वो दगादार किसका था तुम पूछते हो अक्सर कि वो यार किसका था मुकर गया वो ऐन वक्त पे आके कैसे कहूँ मैं तुमने में तरफदार किसका था अश्कों का दरिया समंदर हो गया खुशहाल था या दिल बहुत खंडर हो गया वो तो आया नहीं पलट के दोबारा फिर कभी मैं जिद्दी था बड़ा उसकी कब्र पे सो गया अब आपको मिलने जाता था मैं हवालातों में कि झूठ बोलूं नहीं गुजारी रातें फाकों में बचपन गुम गया है इल्म के खजानों में समझ अब जवानी गुजर चुका कला और गानों में पता है लाजिम हो चुकी हैं हमें गजनवी कहें पूरा शहर जानता है पर यूं अजनबी रहे हम जौन के मिजाज के हैं साहब समझा तो करो खफा हो के चल पड़े या फिर सरदगी सहें हम कड़वा बोलते हैं जहर खाना सीख लें म्यूजिक हराम खुदा से कितने करीब हैं शान बड़ा बैठा उनकी जो मेरे हरीफ थे इनका हौसला बड़ा तो वो मेरे हरीफ हैं मैं शाहीन मुझे गिनो नहीं है काबू में बेधड़क खड़े हुए इतने अजाबों में छोड़ दी पढ़ाई हुनर लगा तू प्यारिया ख्याल है मेरा तू पहला मलाल है मेरा मैं जादूगर हूँ कलम के साथ तू पहला
क्यों जगाती हो, तुम कहाँ हो, क्या सियाही में समाती हो, हमेशा देर कर देता हूँ मैं पता है ना, तो मेरी जान तुम भी वक्त पर क्यों आती हो। हम खुद से बागी हैं या बेखबर, न मौत आती है ना ही सबर, तू ही ना मिला मुझे अगर तो मैं फासले बढ़ाऊं तुमसे बस।
तू खींचे अपनी ओर, ना चलता खुद पे जोर, तू डाले ऐसी डोर, I'm hoping you don't let it go, let it go। छोड़ो ये बहाने ये कहानियाँ, बढ़ाओ ना तुम दिल की परेशानियाँ, हम पहले आशिक तो नहीं है जाने मन, ये इश्क खा गया बड़ी जवानियाँ। मैं इस फर्ज से जुड़ के बहुत खुश, क्या करें तेरी हवाएं हैं सवारियाँ, हम खो गए हैं खुद में, मिलके नहीं दे रहे, तो क्या ईद क्या दीवारियाँ।
बस एक झलक जो दिख जाए मुझे तेरी, तो शुरू करें हम ईद की तैयारियां। मैं इस फर्ज से जुड़ के बहुत खुश, बादलों से है लगाई तूने यारियां, तेरे सामान से भरी मेरी अलमारियां, मत करो तुम और मजीद मेहरबानियां, मैं बस दिल की बात कहने वाला था तुम्हें, फिर किसी ने मुझको नींद से जगा दिया। माहिर हो गया हूँ मैं भी अब तड़पने में, तो क्यों डरेंगे हम भी दिल को रखने में। बदल गए हो तुम भी या पता नहीं, तुम ऐसे तो नहीं थे मेरे सपने में।
दुनिया
If I go, let him know I said लड़के लगा रहे, लड़के लगा रहे। If I go, let him know I said तेरी अपनी जगह है, bro तेरी अपनी जगह है। Let him know कि वो कर दिल रज़ामंद जिसमें, let him know हम एक रूप दो जिस्म में, let him know कि कोई मर के भी मरे ना, let him know यहाँ मौत की भी किस्में।
हिप-हॉप अंधेरे में था और हम दोनों टॉर्च थे, डबल और ट्रिपल पे शो बजाने पहुंचते, अपनी जिंदगी थिएटर, गॉड्स प्ले गॉड्स प्लान, कोशिश मेरे हाथ में, मैंने कोशिशों पे कोशिशें ही की हैं, ये मेरा तजुर्बा है मेरी असलियत यही है। मेरे टैलेंट पे सोया था पूरा शहर, एक वक्त था कि अपने भी लगते थे मुझे गैर, कुछ नहीं मिलना रैप से, बोले घर वाले, अब वो घर वाले कहते घर में स्टूडियो बना ले, वक्त बदलता है you just gotta do you, खुदा सबका है मत होना उदास यूं, तेज नहीं ज्यादा भाग बेटा ये मैराथन है रेस नहीं, समझा बात मैं राइम में एडवाइस दे रहा, लाइफ चेंजिंग डिग्री नहीं थी डेडिकेशन से लाइफ चेंज हुई, बिखरी नहीं थी जो चीजें वो अब है नजर में, मेरा क्या बनता म्यूजिक छोड़ देता अगर मैं बांट दूं तो भी बचे मुझे 7 फिगर्स, मुझे लाइन लेकर आती आके गोल्ड डिगर्स, सोना मुझ पे हराम एंड सो इज लिकर, मैं तेरी तरह एक इंसान ही हूँ जिगर, मैंने टाइम लगाया कोई नहीं बोला मुझे लगा रहे, मैंने खुद को बोला बस तू अपना सगा रहे और लगा रहे।
If I go, let him know I said लड़के लगा रहे, लड़के लगा रहे। If I go, let him know I said तेरी अपनी जगह है, bro तेरी अपनी जगह है। Let him know कि वो कर दिल रज़ामंद जिसमें, let him know हम एक रूप दो जिस्म में, let him know कि कोई मर के भी मरे ना, let him know यहाँ मौत की भी किस्में।
बेमिसाल थे मेरी के बेमिसाल हूँ मैं, टपका दूं राल लोग तरसते पर निढालूं मैं, खुद से सवाल अपनी टपका दूं राल लोग तरसते पर निढाल
constantly distracted. Notifications, deadlines, and a never-ending to-do list are pulling you in a million directions. But what if there was an ancient method to quiet the noise, bring your mind into laser-sharp focus, and finally start crushing your goals? In this video, I'll show you how to apply the Lotus Method, rooted in Eastern philosophy, to transform your scattered thoughts into a calm, clear, and focused mindset. Miss this, and you might never break free from distraction. But watch through and change your life, starting now. Part 1. Gohan's struggle with resistance. Gohan is full of potential, much like you. He has big dreams and clear goals. He wants to get fit, excel in his career, and improve his personal life. But every time he tries to take action. Part 1. Gohan's struggle with resistance. Gohan is full of potential, much like you. He has big dreams and clear goals. He wants to get fit, excel in his career, and improve his personal life. But every time he tries to take action, something holds him back. It's not that Gohan lacks motivation. He watches motivational videos, listens to podcasts, and reads about self-improvement. But despite all of that, his mind resists when it's time to act. He finds himself scrolling through his phone instead of working on his goals. Every time he plans to start something important, his brain pulls him towards something more comfortable, something easier. He's stuck in a cycle of procrastination and self-doubt. And the worst part is, he knows exactly what's happening, but can't seem to break free. This isn't just a Gohan problem. It's a universal one. It's the mind's way of avoiding discomfort. Every time we face a challenge that feels hard or unfamiliar, the mind seeks comfort in distractions. Social media, games, even daydreaming. Gohan feels like he's battling himself, and no matter how much motivational content he consumes, it never lasts. He's starting to realize he needs something deeper, something more grounded than fleeting motivation. In Eastern philosophy, the mind is often compared to a wild monkey, jumping from one thought or distraction to the next, avoiding anything that feels uncomfortable or difficult. The Buddha once said, "Your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own unguarded thoughts." This is exactly what's happening to Gohan. His own mind is sabotaging him. His thoughts constantly pull him away from what he truly wants, towards what feels comfortable in the moment. The ancient monks understood this battle and developed methods to tame the mind, bringing it into focus, clarity, and calmness. What Gohan is experiencing is the human condition. The mind, by nature, resists challenges. It prefers safety and familiarity. But Eastern teachings, especially those that influence the Lotus Method, show us that this resistance is not something to fight against with brute force. Instead, the first step is awareness. The mind resists because it seeks to protect us from discomfort, but it's possible to shift this dynamic. Awareness is key. Once Gohan becomes aware that his mind is naturally wired to avoid discomfort, he can stop being so hard on himself. This is the first lesson in the Lotus Method. Before trying to change the mind, you have to protect us from discomfort. Show us that this resistance is not something to fight against with brute force. Instead, the first step is awareness. The mind resists because it seeks to protect us from discomfort, but it's possible to shift this dynamic. Awareness is key. Once Gohan becomes aware that his mind is naturally wired to avoid discomfort, he can stop being so hard on himself. This is the first lesson in the Lotus Method. Before trying to change the mind, you have to understand it. For Gohan, the battle is clear. His mind is resisting because it's wired to do so. But now he sees that the first step is not to fight his mind or force it to behave differently. It's about awareness. When Gohan becomes aware of his mind's resistance, he stops trying to bulldoze through it and instead acknowledges the role his mind plays in protecting him from discomfort. But rather than give in to those protective tendencies, Gohan learns to observe them without judgment. This is a core principle of the Lotus Method. Before you can change your thoughts, you must first become aware of them. Awareness is only the first step. Now that Gohan has seen his mind for what it is, how does he move forward? The next phase of the Lotus Method teaches him how to release the grip of resistance and flow with his thoughts rather than against them. Part 2. Embracing the flow of life. Gohan realizes that his old methods, forcing himself to work harder, pushing through resistance, aren't working. So he starts looking for deeper wisdom. That's when he stumbles upon the teachings of Lao Tzu, the ancient philosopher of Taoism. Lao Tzu speaks about Wu Wei, the concept of non-resistance, the art of moving with life instead of fighting against it. One of Lao Tzu's teachings resonates deeply with Gohan. By letting it go, it all gets done. This confuses him at first. How can letting go lead to accomplishing things? But the more he reflects on it, the more he understands that maybe the reason he's been struggling so much is because he's been fighting against life, against his own nature. Gohan starts to wonder, what if doing hard things wasn't about sheer force? What if there was a way to approach his challenges that didn't feel like constant resistance? The Lotus Method, rooted in this Eastern philosophy, suggests that maybe the solution isn't to fight harder, but to stop fighting altogether, to find the natural flow within the effort. Wu Wei teaches something that feels counterintuitive in today's world, that by going with the flow of life, rather than resisting it, we can actually accomplish more. It's not about giving up or being passive. It's about moving in harmony with the natural rhythms of life. When we push too hard, life pushes back. But when we align ourselves with life's current, we move forward with less effort. Gohan begins to see that his constant battle to push his mind to work harder only makes it fight back. By embracing this ancient Taoist wisdom, he realizes that it's possible to work on difficult tasks without resisting them. Instead of viewing hard tasks as enemies, he starts seeing them as part of the flow. Gohan starts applying Wu Wei in his life. Instead of forcing himself through every difficult task, he learns to approach them with ease. When something hard comes up, whether it's a workout, a work project, or a personal challenge, he pauses. Instead of forcing himself through every difficult task, he learns to approach them with ease. When something hard comes up, whether it's a workout, a work project, or a personal challenge, he pauses and reminds himself not to resist it. He accepts that difficulty is part of life's flow, and in doing so, he releases the inner struggle. This shift makes his tasks feel lighter. Where once he battled with himself to get things done, he now feels a sense of calmness in the process. This is the next step in the Lotus Method, releasing resistance and finding harmony in effort. Now that Gohan has started to go with the flow of life, he needs to learn how to cultivate stillness and reflection to deepen his journey. Part 3. The Power of Stillness and Reflection. Gohan's journey continues as he searches for ways to quiet his restless mind. That's when he encounters Zen Buddhism and the concept of Zazen, or sitting meditation. At first, the idea seems simple, just sitting in silence. But as Gohan tries it, he discovers how difficult it is to sit still while his mind races. He's used to constant action, to thinking that doing more is the solution. But as he learns from Zen Master Dogen's teachings, if you can't find the truth right where you are, where it is to sit still while his mind races. He's used to constant action, to thinking that doing more is the solution. But as he learns from Zen Master Dogen's teachings, if you can't find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it? Gohan begins to realize that true strength and clarity don't come from constantly moving forward. They come from stillness. Through Zazen, Gohan experiences a powerful shift. Instead of his mind feeling chaotic and scattered, it starts to settle. Just like a lake disturbed by wind calms down when the wind stops, Gohan's mind becomes clearer the more he practices stillness. It's in these moments of quiet reflection that he starts to see his challenges for what they really are, not insurmountable obstacles, but opportunities to grow. Gohan realizes that his constant urge to do was what made his mind so resistant to the hard tasks. In stillness, he finds a sharpness in his thoughts, a clarity he hadn't experienced before. Instead of rushing headlong into tasks, he takes a step back, practices zazen, and lets the answers come to him. In the quiet, he discovers his own inner strength. This is the third step in the Lotus Method. Cultivating stillness. Gohan begins to embrace the idea that stillness, like the roots of the lotus flower buried in the mud, provides the foundation for growth. Just as the lotus flower rises through the mud to bloom in purity, Gohan realizes that his challenges, the very things that cause stress and anxiety, are the mud that can nourish his personal growth. By practicing stillness daily, he not only calms his mind, but also develops a steady focus. Now, when he approaches difficult tasks, his mind is clear, and he's able to move through challenges with a calm, deliberate energy. But stillness alone isn't enough. Gohan has learned how to calm his mind, but now he must take that calm focus and turn it into action. Part 4. Turning reflection into action. As Gohan continues practicing stillness, something begins to change. His mind, once chaotic and scattered, becomes a tool for focus and sharp decision-making. He recalls the lessons of the Shaolin monks, who not only meditated for hours, but also perfected their bodies through physical discipline. The monks believed in a deep connection between mental clarity and physical action. One could not exist without the other. Gohan realizes that meditation has given him clarity, but now it's time to turn that reflection into purposeful action, much like the Shaolin monks who applied their inner calm to their movements in martial arts. Gohan starts to see his life tasks, like a Shaolin monk would approach their training, with precision, purpose, and patience. Every task, no matter how small, deserves focus. He understands that he doesn't need to take on everything at once. Instead, he can channel his newfound clarity into one action at a time. The Shaolin monks teach that true mastery is the harmony between the mind and body. If the mind is still, the body can act with intention. But if the mind is chaotic, the body's actions are also disordered. In the same way, Gohan learns that his stillness needs to translate into focused, intentional action. Meditation without action leads to stagnation, and action without hearts. Gohan starts to see his life tasks, like a Shaolin monk would approach their training, with precision, purpose, and patience. Every task, no matter how small, deserves focus. He understands that he doesn't need to take on everything at once. Instead, he can channel his newfound clarity into one action at a time. The Shaolin monks teach that true mastery is the harmony between the mind and body. If the mind is still, the body can act with intention. But if the mind is chaotic, the body's actions are also disordered. In the same way, Gohan learns that his stillness needs to translate into focused, intentional action. Meditation without action leads to stagnation, and action without reflection leads to burnout. The key is balance. The monk's wisdom shows him that when both are aligned, he can achieve more than he ever thought possible without feeling overwhelmed. The fourth step in the Lotus Method is action with intention. Gohan realizes that his ability to succeed doesn't come from doing 100 things at once. It comes from doing one thing at a time with his full attention. He begins to approach his work, relationships, and personal projects with this singular focus, giving each task his full energy and clarity. As a result, he finds that the hard tasks he once dreaded now seem manageable, and he moves through them with calm determination. Gohan is no longer scattered. He's precise, like a Shaolin monk practicing a kata with deliberate, mindful movements. But even and physical action, one could not exist without the other. Gohan realizes that meditation has given him clarity, but now it's time to turn that reflection into purposeful action, much like the Shaolin monks who applied their inner calm to their movements in martial arts. Gohan starts to see his life tasks like a Shaolin monk would approach their training, with precision, purpose, and patience. Every task, no matter how small, deserves focus. He understands that he doesn't need to take on everything at once. Instead, he can channel his newfound clarity into one action at a time. The Shaolin monks teach that true mastery is the harmony between the mind and body. If the mind is still, the body can act with intention. But if the mind is chaotic, the body's actions are also disordered. In the same way, Gohan learns that his stillness needs to translate into focused, intentional action. Meditation without action leads to stagnation, and action without reflection leads to burnout. The key is balance. The monk's wisdom shows him that when both are aligned, he can achieve more than he ever thought possible without feeling overwhelmed. The fourth step in the Lotus Method is action with intention. Gohan realizes that his ability to succeed doesn't come from
आता नहीं मेरे दिल को सुकून दुनिया झूठी दुनिया वाले हैं दर्द से भरी मेरी ये कहानी है ना बात करनी ना तुझको सुनानी सोचो कभी मैं ये किसे कहूँ आता नहीं मेरे दिल को सुकून दुनिया झूठी दुनिया वाले हैं fake उनके बारे में ये मेरा है take I don't care what you think what your emotions are I'm gonna call it a spade is a spade ऐसे करे कोई ना survive हर कोई समझता अपने को wise बातें ही बातें हैं वो सारी बातें हैं अंदर से खोख ले तुझे को रोकते क्यों नहीं ये अपने आप को टोकते आती है क्यों इन पे मुझको हंसी फिरते हैं दुनिया में जैसे आजाद हैं पर अपने अंदर है सब slave जो मन में आता है मैं करता हूँ अकेले मैं दुनिया से लड़ता हूँ जब तक ना हो उसमें गहराई वो बात कभी मैं ना करता हूँ जो शिकवा तुम करती हो मुझसे गिला मेरा वो ही है तुझसे एक लफ्ज मैंने बोला ना उस दिन जब मिलने गई थी तुम मुझसे जब करती थी फ्लर्ट मैं होता था hurt don't you think I remember every word I love you from dawn ना सुबह हम morning दोस्तों ने भी तेरे बारे में warning but I was so stupid to give as a cupid I don't know why I was so keen on falling in love चलो खत्म करे सारी बातें जागू मैं यार कितनी रातें थक सा गया हूँ अब जाने दो आखिरी आंसू पे जाने दो I don't wanna stick around इस मेरा still having fun किससे कहानी है ये मनमानी है दिल में जो बचा है उसकी निशानियाँ लेके चला हूँ कि एक दिन मिल जाऊँ
from doing 100 things at once. It comes from doing one thing at a time with his full attention. He became begins to approach his work, relationships, and personal projects with this singular focus, giving each task his full energy and clarity. As a result, he finds that the hard tasks he once dreaded now seem manageable, and he moves through them with calm determination. Gohan is no longer scattered. He's precise, like a Shaolin monk practicing a kata with deliberate, mindful movements. But even with focus and intention, there's one more essential piece to the puzzle. Gohan is no longer scattered. He's precise, like a Shaolin monk practicing a kata with deliberate, mindful movements. But even with focus and intention, there's one more essential piece to the puzzle. Part 5. The Lotus and the Art of Patience. Gohan has been making steady progress. He's learned to calm his mind through stillness and reflection, and he's started to turn that clarity into intentional action. But as the days go by, he finds himself growing impatient. Despite his focus and effort, the results aren't coming as quickly as he hoped. The frustration builds, and Gohan begins to wonder if he's doing something wrong. That's when he remembers the teachings of the Eastern monks who often spoke about the lotus flower. The lotus grows slowly, pushing its way through the thick mud beneath the surface before it blooms into something beautiful. The monks teach that the beauty of the lotus is in its patience. It doesn't rush the process. It blooms when it's ready. Gohan realizes that just like the lotus, he needs to practice patience. The progress may be slow, but rushing it will only create resistance. Gohan learns to embrace the slowness of the journey. By letting go of his impatience, he finds that he is more at peace with his progress. Like the lotus flower, he knows that his bloom will come, but it will happen in its own time. The art of patience becomes his final lesson in mastering the mind, and with it, he feels a sense of calm that he had never experienced before. So, where are you on this journey? Are you resisting, or are you ready to embrace the lotus method? Start with one step, whether it's practicing stillness, applying more intentional focus, or learning to be patient with yourself. Your growth will come, but it will unfold in its own time. If this video gave you some insight, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and let's continue this journey of mastering the mind together.
What if I told you that the key to shifting your reality lies in something as simple as your breathing? As crazy as this sounds, you're inhaling the essence of the universe with your every inhalation. It's the most fundamental act of life, something we do unconsciously every moment of every day. And yet, 99% of people don't know the truth about breathing. This simple action has the power to transform your entire existence, but only if you know the secret behind it. Let's discover the long-kept secret of ancient respiration masters, something so powerful that it had to be kept hidden for centuries. The art of pranayama. Throughout history, various spiritual traditions have recognized the breath as a bridge between the physical and the spiritual realms. In ancient Hindu philosophy, pranayama, literally control of the breath, is considered one of the most powerful tools for spiritual awakening and mastery over the self. The breath is more than just air. It is life force, energy, and spirit. It is the thread that connects your body to your soul and your soul to the cosmos. So what if the key to unlocking your deepest potential and connecting with the infinite lies in something as simple as pranayama? You can start by breathing with intention and awareness. Understand your breath pattern. Your breath then becomes a vehicle for change, allowing you to align with the deeper rhythms of the universe. It's as if you are tuning yourself to a higher frequency, one that resonates with the flow of abundance, peace, and clarity. Consider this. Every thought, every emotion, every action is accompanied by a corresponding breath pattern. When you are anxious, your breath becomes shallow and rapid. When you are calm, it slows down, becoming deep and steady. By consciously altering your breath, you can begin to shift your emotional and mental states, and in turn, influence the reality around you. With every inhale and exhale, You have the opportunity to guide your thoughts, emotions, and experiences in the direction of your choosing. But this is not just about positive thinking or wishful desires. It's about tapping into a deeper, more profound understanding of how the universe operates. The breath is the key to unlocking this knowledge. In the Taoist tradition, the breath is seen as a means of connecting with the Tao, the ultimate source of all things. When you breathe in a certain way, you can literally feel reality begin to shift around you. It's as if the veil between the seen and the unseen becomes thinner, allowing you to access higher states of consciousness and awareness. In these moments, you may notice that your thoughts become clearer, your emotions more balanced, and your intuition heightened. You start to see synchronicities and signs that confirm you are on the right path. But let's not hesitate anymore. The best way to learn this is by practicing it. To begin this pranayama exercise, find a quiet space where you can sit comfortably, whether you choose to sit cross-legged on the floor.
Have you ever felt like you're stuck in a version of yourself that just doesn't serve you anymore? Like you're holding on to habits, thoughts, and patterns that are keeping you from the person you're meant to be? What if I told you that to move forward, you need to kill your current self? Not in a destructive way, but in a way that allows you to rise stronger, just like a phoenix. Part 1. The struggle with the old self. Let's talk about Gohan. He's just like many of us, someone who's been stuck in the same patterns for years. Every day feels like a repeat of the last. He knows something's off, but he can't quite put his finger on it. He's been trying to break free, to grow into something better, but every time he takes a step forward, he feels like he's pulled right back into the same old routines. Gohan keeps making the same mistakes, falling into the same habits, and wondering why life isn't changing. It's like he's living on autopilot. Maybe you can relate to Gohan. Maybe you're stuck in a cycle of habits and thoughts that once served you, but are now holding you back. And that's the thing about our old self. It's not necessarily bad. In fact, it might have gotten you through tough times or helped you succeed in the past. But there comes a point when the version of yourself that got you here is no longer the version that can take you forward. It keeps you comfortable, but not fulfilled. Musashi said, "Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world." And that's what Gohan's missing. He's holding routines. Repeat of the the last. He knows something's off, but he can't quite put his finger on it. He's been trying to break free, to grow into something better, but every time he takes a step forward, he feels like he's pulled right back into the same old routines. Gohan keeps making the same mistakes, falling into the same habits, and wondering why life isn't changing. It's like he's living on autopilot. Maybe you can relate to Gohan. Maybe you're stuck in a cycle of habits and thoughts that once served you but are now holding you back. And that's the thing about our old self. It's not necessarily bad. In fact, it might have gotten you through tough times or helped you succeed in the past. But there comes a point when the version of yourself that got you here is no longer the version that can take you forward. It keeps you comfortable, but not fulfilled. Musashi said, "Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world." And that's what Gohan's missing. He's holding on too tightly to his current self, thinking that's all he can be. But the truth is, to grow, we have to be willing to let go of who we are now. The habits that feel familiar but keep us from taking risks. The thoughts that convince us we can't do better. The patterns that hold us back. We all have an old self, the version of us that served a purpose up to now. But now it's time to move on. And just like Gohan, you might feel stuck, not knowing how to let go. But here's the thing. Transformation requires you to face the truth about your current self and accept that the person you are today isn't the person you need to be tomorrow. But before Gohan can rise as someone new, he has to confront the uncomfortable truth about his current self. That's where the process of burning down the old begins. Part 2. Burning down the old. Now, Gohan's finally come to a realization. He needs to change. He's recognized that the habits, the mindset, and the version of himself he's been holding on to are keeping him stuck. But realizing the need for change is one thing. Letting go of that old self is something entirely different. It's uncomfortable. It's painful. And for Gohan, it feels like he's standing at the edge of a cliff, terrified of what will happen if he lets go. Letting go of the old version of yourself isn't easy. It's scary to think about burning away the parts of you that you've held on to for so long. The parts that have kept you safe, that feel familiar. But if Gohan wants to transform, this is where the process begins. It's not about making small adjustments. It's about burning away the parts of himself that are holding him back. This is where Musashi's Dokudo comes in. Musashi taught detachment, not just from material possessions, but from the identity we cling to. For Gohan, and for you, it means letting go of the limitations, fears, and beliefs that have defined who you are up to this point. You have to detach from the version of yourself that you've built, the one that tells you, "This is all I can be." It's not just about giving up bad habits, it's about unlearning the things you've always believed about yourself that no longer serve you. For Gohan, this means shedding the old skin that's become too tight, too restrictive. It's uncomfortable because he's been living in that skin for so long that it's hard to imagine life without it. But this is the key. Before you can become someone new, you must let the old version of you fall apart. Imagine the phoenix rising from the ashes. Before it can be reborn, it must burn. And that's what Gohan is doing, burning down the old self. It's not a pleasant process, but it's necessary. The fears that have kept him from stepping forward, the limitations that have made him think small, all of that has to go. Only then can the transformation begin. Once Gohan has burned down the old, what remains? Ashes. But in those ashes, he'll find the spark that will allow him to rebuild himself, stronger and more intentional than before. Part 3. Finding the ashes. Now, Gohan has burned down his old self. Everything he once thought defined him, his habits, his mindset, his old patterns, is gone. He's at rock bottom, and it feels like chaos. There's nothing left to hold on to, but it's in this moment of stillness, in the ashes of what he once was, that the real transformation begins. Because in these ashes, Gohan is free. free from the constraints of who he thought he was supposed to be. It's tempting to rush through this stage, to try to rebuild yourself as fast as possible. But true transformation requires stillness, sitting in that empty space where everything feels stripped away. It's uncomfortable, but it's also where the magic happens. It's in this stillness that you start to rediscover who you really are, and more importantly, who you want to be. Carl Jung often spoke about the shadow. Set his old patterns is gone. He's at rock bottom, and it feels like chaos. There's nothing left to hold on to, but it's in this moment of stillness, in the ashes of what he once was, that the real transformation begins. Because in these ashes, Gohan is free. Free from the constraints of who he thought he was supposed to be. It's tempting to rush through this stage, to try to rebuild yourself as fast as possible. But true transformation requires stillness, sitting in that empty space where everything feels stripped away. It's uncomfortable, but it's also where the magic happens. It's in this stillness that you start to rediscover who you really are, and more importantly, who you want to be. Carl Jung often spoke about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, the things we don't want to confront. When you've burned away the old version of yourself, the shadow surfaces. And it's not something to be feared. It's something to be integrated. This is the moment where you acknowledge the things about yourself you've been avoiding, the fears, the doubts, the insecurities. But instead of pushing them away, you use them to fuel your next steps. This is where Gohan begins to shift. He realizes he doesn't have to completely reinvent himself. He doesn't need to become someone entirely new. What he's doing is rebuilding, taking the best parts of himself and letting go of the rest. The old self had its purpose, but now he's ready to create something stronger, something more aligned with his true potential. The stillness is the turning point. It's where Gohan and you stop letting the old story define what's possible. It's where you find clarity, focus, and direction for the person you're becoming. The shadow doesn't control you, it empowers you. And now, in the ashes, Gohan has the spark to rebuild. But how do you ensure that what you're building will truly last? Part 4. Rebuilding with intention. Now that Gohan is standing in the ashes of his former self, he's ready to rebuild. But this time, it's different. He's not rushing back to who he used to be or falling into old habits. This time, Gohan is rebuilding with intention. Every piece of the person he's becoming is chosen carefully. He's not just adding back what's familiar, he's creating something stronger, something that's truly aligned with who he wants to be. Rebirth isn't just about wiping the slate clean, it's about rebuilding with purpose. This is where many people stumble. After tearing down the old self, they slip back into the same patterns they were trying to escape. It's easy to fall into the comfort of what's familiar. But if you want real transformation, you have to be in. Gohan is standing in the, and now in the ashes, Gohan has the spark to rebuild. But how do you ensure that what you're building will truly last? Part 4. Rebuilding with intention. Now that Gohan is standing in the ashes of his former self, he's ready to rebuild. But this time, it's different. He's not rushing back to who he used to be or falling into old habits. This time, Gohan is rebuilding with intention. Every piece of the person he's becoming is chosen carefully. He's not just adding back what's familiar, he's creating something stronger, something that's truly aligned with who he wants to be. Rebirth isn't just about wiping the slate clean, it's about rebuilding with purpose. This is where many people stumble. After tearing down the old self, they slip back into the same patterns they were trying to escape. It's easy to fall into the comfort of what's familiar. But if you want real transformation, you have to be intentional about what you bring into your new life. James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits. He explains that small, deliberate changes, when done consistently, lead to long-lasting transformation. Gohan starts small, thinking about what habits, thoughts, and practices are truly serving him. He doesn't try to overhaul his entire life overnight. Instead, he asks himself, what do I want to keep from my old self? What do I want to let go of? And that's the key. Rebuilding isn't about becoming someone completely different. It's about refining who you are. It's about getting rid of the habits and mindsets that held you back and intentionally choosing new ones that align with your values and goals. Gohan knows, and that's the key. Rebuilding isn't about becoming someone completely different. Part 4. Rebuilding with intention. Now that Gohan is standing in the ashes of his former self, he's ready to rebuild. But this time, it's different. He's not rushing back to who he used to be or falling into old habits. This time, Gohan is rebuilding with intention. Every piece of the person he's becoming is chosen carefully. He's not just adding back what's familiar, he's creating something stronger, something that's truly aligned with who he wants to be. Rebirth isn't just about wiping the slate clean, it's about rebuilding with purpose. This is where many people stumble. After tearing down the old self, they slip back into the same patterns they were trying to escape. It's easy to fall into the comfort of what's familiar. But if you want real transformation, you have to be intentional about what you bring into your new life. James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits. He explains that small, deliberate changes, when done consistently, lead to long-lasting transformation. Gohan starts small, thinking about what habits, thoughts, and practices are truly serving him. He doesn't try to overhaul his entire life overnight. Instead, he asks himself, what do I want to keep from my old self? What do I want to let go of? And that's the key. Rebuilding isn't about becoming someone completely different. It's about refining who you are. It's about getting rid of the habits and mindsets that held you back and intentionally choosing new ones that align with your values and goals. Gohan knows that if he doesn't choose carefully, he'll just end up becoming a slightly different version of his old self, trapped in the same cycle. He starts by focusing on small, actionable changes. Maybe it's waking up 30 minutes earlier to reflect on his goals. Maybe it's cutting out distractions that keep him from being productive. These small steps, though they may seem insignificant at first, compound over time. And with every intentional choice, Gohan is becoming more aligned with the vision he has for his life. Rebuilding with intention means taking control of your future. It's about deciding what kind of person you want to be and then choosing the habits, routines, and mindset that will get you there. Gohan understands that this isn't a quick fix. It's a gradual process. But with each step, he's building a version of himself that's stronger, more focused, and more aligned with his true potential. But even as Gohan rebuilds himself, he knows that the process doesn't stop here. Rebirth isn't a one-time event, it's a cycle. Continuous growth is what keeps him evolving. Part 5. The Cycle of Rebirth. Gohan has risen from the ashes. He's shed his old self, faced the stillness, and rebuilt with intention. But here's the truth. His journey isn't over. Transformation isn't a one-time thing. Just as the phoenix is reborn again and again, Gohan knows that his growth is a cycle. It's a process he will repeat, not just once, but many times throughout his life. Musashi understood this well. He believed that mastery wasn't a destination. It was a journey that required constant learning and evolving. Musashi never stopped growing. Even at the height of his skills, he continued to refine his craft, to study, to improve. And that's what Gohan realizes now. The version of himself he's built today might serve him well for a while, but eventually, he'll have to shed it too. The Phoenix method teaches us that rebirth isn't the end. It's the beginning of the next phase. Life will keep changing, and so will Gohan's challenges. As he moves forward, there will be new habits to break, new mindsets to adopt, and new versions of himself to become. This cycle of death and rebirth is essential for continuous growth. The person you are today may not be enough to handle the challenges you'll face tomorrow, and that's okay. It's part of the process. The key here is resilience. Gohan knows that life will knock him down again at some point. He might face setbacks, failures, or moments of doubt, but he's no longer afraid of falling apart. He understands that falling apart is just part of the transformation. Each time he rises, he becomes stronger, more focused, and more aligned with his purpose. This is the Phoenix method in action. Rise, evolve, and rise again. Just like the phoenix, Gohan will continue to burn away parts of himself that no longer serve him over and over throughout his life. And this isn't a weakness, it's the source of his strength. Every time he sheds an old layer, he grows stronger. Every time he falls and gets back up, he rises higher. The real power of this method is in embracing the cycle. You don't just kill your current self once. You do it again and again as you grow, as you face new challenges, and as you step into bigger, more meaningful versions of your life. And that's the beauty of continuous growth. It's never ending. You're never done becoming who you're meant to be. Now that Gohan has learned to rise from the ashes, it's time for you to put the Phoenix method into action. So what will you let go of today? What parts of your current self need to burn away so you can rise stronger? If this video resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and stick around for more content on transformation, personal growth, and mastering the art of self-improvement. Miyamoto Musashi was a samurai legend, feared and respected for never losing a duel. His presence alone was enough to intimidate. He carried an aura that went beyond skill, rooted in years of mental and spiritual discipline. Musashi's power wasn't just physical, it was a mastery of mind and spirit that radiated strength. In this video, we'll explore the Musashi method, his principles for building a presence that commands respect and fear alike. Part 1. The Foundation of Fearlessness, Mastering the Self. Musashi's legendary aura didn't come from raw skill alone. It was rooted in his relentless focus on mastering himself. He understood that if he couldn't control his own mind, no amount of physical power would ever be enough. The confidence people sensed in him came from a fearless inner calm, built on facing his own fears and weaknesses head on. Musashi once said, "Today is victory over yourself of yesterday. Tomorrow is your victory over lesser men." To him, true strength came from conquering his own doubts, insecurities, and limitations each day. Max took this lesson to heart. He'd always thought confidence was about outward success, but Musashi's words made him realize it started from within. He decided to follow Musashi's path, facing his own fears one step at a time. Max knew he couldn't build that fearless aura overnight, but he could start with small challenges. So he began speaking up in situations where he'd usually stay silent, like sharing his opinions in meetings or asserting himself in conversations. Each time, he felt the initial wave of fear, but instead of backing down, he reminded himself of Musashi's example. The more Max faced these small fears, the more he felt his confidence growing, almost like a muscle he was training. Musashi had faced countless duels, each one sharpening his mind as much as his sword. Max saw his own daily challenges as his duels. By tackling each one, he was conditioning his mind to stay calm under pressure, just like Musashi. With each step forward, Max felt himself transforming. His confidence was no longer a mask, but something deeper, grounded in his own experiences of facing what once held him back. He started noticing how others reacted to him, sensing a new strength in his presence that hadn't been there before. Through Musashi's method of self-mastery, Max was beginning to build his own aura, a quiet, fearless confidence that others could feel without him even saying a word. Part 2. Unwavering focus, eliminating distractions. Musashi's reputation as an undefeated samurai wasn't just about his skill with a sword, it was about his extraordinary focus. While others might let distractions, fears, or doubts cloud their minds in battle, Musashi trained himself to shut everything out except the task at hand. This focus was what made him so intimidating. His opponents could sense it. Musashi wasn't thinking about fame, about proving himself, or about his next victory. All he cared about was the mastery of the moment, and that gave him an edge few could match. Max felt drawn to this idea. He'd always struggled with distractions, whether it was his phone, his wandering thoughts, or the need to keep up with others. Musashi's approach was different from anything he'd encountered before. While most advice focused on achieving multiple things at once, Musashi's life was a testament to the power of single-minded dedication. Musashi hadn't built his aura by trying to impress others. He built it by committing to mastery without letting anything, even success, take him off course. Max decided to apply this philosophy. He picked one simple area in his life where he could practice this single-minded focus, his morning routine. He realized he had a habit of jumping from one thing to another without finishing any of them fully. He'd start an email, then switch to checking messages, then scroll through social media, all without completing anything. Inspired by Musashi, he set a goal to do one task at a time, from start to finish, without letting his mind drift. At first, it was challenging. His mind would try to pull him in different directions, reminding him of other things he needed to get done. But Max pushed himself to stay with one thing, practicing Musashi's intense focus in his own way. It was frustrating at times. Those little distractions kept trying to break his concentration. But with each day, he noticed he could stay with his tasks a bit longer, finding a kind of satisfaction in truly finishing something. As his focus grew, Max started noticing something surprising. People seemed more drawn to him. It was as if they could feel his newfound clarity. His aura had shifted. He no longer had that scattered, anxious energy. Instead, he felt calm, confident, and in control, even when things around him were chaotic. By practicing Musashi's focus, Max was beginning to develop his own powerful presence. He learned that mastery didn't come from showing off or chasing attention. It came from committing fully to each moment. This focus, like Musashi's, was becoming a core part of his aura, a quiet strength that needed no words. Part 3. Detached power, remaining calm under pressure. One of Musashi's most powerful traits was his ability to stay calm even in the face of death. He had an aura of unshakable composure that left opponents unnerved, sensing they were up against something they couldn't break. Musashi didn't just rely on his physical skills, he relied on his mind. mastering the art of detachment so that no fear or distraction could shake him. This mastery of calm was like an invisible armor, making him appear untouchable and giving him a presence that commanded respect. At the heart of Musashi's calm was the concept of no mind, or mushin. This state is one where the mind is free from distracting thoughts, doubts, or fears. In mushin, the mind becomes like still water, focused, clear, and entirely present. This allowed Musashi to act instinctively and without hesitation, moving with precision and decisiveness. Opponents could sense this readiness, feeling the quiet, intimidating power that came from his total presence. Max found this idea of mushin intriguing. He'd always let stressful situations cloud his mind, filling him with hesitation or doubt. But he realized that Musashi's calm wasn't just about appearing strong, it was about gaining real control over his mind. Max knew that if he could stay calm under pressure, his own presence would become stronger and more grounded, creating an aura others could feel the moment he walked into a room. To apply this, Max began practicing simple mindfulness techniques like grounding and deep breathing whenever he felt stress creeping in. Before entering a tense situation, he'd take a few deep breaths, focusing on the sensation of his feet on the ground and letting his mind settle. He noticed that this helped him approach challenges with a clearer head rather than reacting impulsively. As he practiced, Max saw the change in himself. No longer fidgeting or shifting nervously, he moved and spoke with calm control. He noticed that people responded differently to him. When he walked into a room, he felt people were drawn to his centered, unhurried presence. This calm gave him a quiet confidence that radiated outward, an aura that didn't need loud words or dramatic actions. By staying calm and detached, Max was embodying Musashi's principles, creating a presence that others felt instantly. A power that came not from force, but from mastery of his own mind. Through detachment, Max realized he didn't need to project strength. By being calm and grounded, he naturally built an aura that others respected and admired. Part 4. Embracing simplicity, reducing attachment to status. Musashi lived a life defined by simplicity. While others pursued fame, wealth, or recognition, he was singularly focused on mastery and personal growth. His lifestyle reflected a deep sense of humility and purpose. He saw material possessions and social status as distractions that could weaken his focus and clarity. Musashi believed that by letting go of these attachments, he could channel all his energy into becoming the best version of himself. This commitment to simplicity gave him an aura of quiet strength that commanded respect. His power wasn't displayed through flashy items or titles, but through his unwavering dedication. One of Musashi's teachings was, "Do not let yourself be guided by the feeling of lust or love." For him, this meant not letting emotions, desires, or ego cloud his vision. He understood that attachment to external things, whether wealth, validation, or admiration, only diluted his focus. By rejecting these distractions, he developed a pure, grounded presence that set him apart. Max saw that this approach was key to building a true aura. He realized he had often gotten caught up in appearances, wanting to seem. Part 4. Embracing simplicity, reducing attachment to status. Musashi lived a life defined by simplicity. While others pursued fame, wealth, or recognition, he was singularly focused on mastery and personal growth. His lifestyle reflected a deep sense of humility and purpose. He saw material possessions and social status as distractions that could weaken his focus and clarity. Musashi believed that by letting go of these attachments, he could channel all his energy into becoming the best version of himself. This commitment to simplicity gave him an aura of quiet strength that commanded respect. His power wasn't displayed through flashy items or titles, but through his unwavering dedication. One of Musashi's teachings was, "Do not let yourself be guided by the feeling of lust or love." For him, this meant not letting emotions, desires, or ego cloud his vision. He understood that attachment to external things, whether wealth, validation, or admiration, only diluted his focus. By rejecting these distractions, he developed a pure, grounded presence that set him apart. Max saw that this approach was key to building a true aura. He realized he had often gotten caught up in appearances, wanting to seem successful or fit certain expectations. But by doing so, he had actually made himself more reliant on external validation, which only we. Part 4. Embracing simplicity, reducing attachment to status. Musashi lived a life defined by simplicity. While others pursued fame, wealth, or recognition, he was singularly focused on mastery and personal growth. His lifestyle reflected a deep sense of humility and purpose. He saw material possessions and social status as distractions that could weaken his focus and clarity. Musashi believed that by letting go of these attachments, he could channel all his energy into becoming the best version of himself. This commitment to simplicity gave him an aura of quiet strength that commanded respect. His power wasn't displayed through flashy items or titles, but through his unwavering dedication. One of Musashi's teachings was, "Do not let yourself be guided by the feeling of lust or love." For him, this meant not letting emotions, desires, or ego cloud his vision. He understood that attachment to external things, whether wealth, validation, or admiration, only diluted his focus. By rejecting these distractions, he developed a pure, grounded presence that set him apart. Max saw that this approach was key to building a true aura. He realized he had often gotten caught up in appearances, wanting to seem successful or fit certain expectations. But by doing so, he had actually made himself more reliant on external validation, which only weakened his confidence and focus. Inspired by Musashi's example, Max started looking at his life and identifying areas where he could let go. He noticed that he could streamline his routines, focus more on essentials, and stop worrying about others' opinions of him. One change Max made was to detach from constant social media validation. Instead of seeking likes or approval, he focused on what really mattered to him, becoming more skilled, disciplined, and centered. This shift freed up his mind, allowing him to channel energy into his personal growth. He found that by simplifying his priorities, he felt more grounded and connected to his purpose, and he no longer felt the need to prove himself. This simplicity transformed Max's presence. When he walked into a room, people sensed an authentic, unshakable confidence that wasn't about showing off. His aura became stronger as he let go of the need for status and focused on his own growth. By embracing simplicity, Max, like Musashi, discovered that true power comes from within, creating an aura that radiates strength, humility, and purpose. Part 5. Commanding the room. Confidence through inner strength. Musashi's aura wasn't about loud displays or flashy bravado. It was a quiet, powerful confidence built on a lifetime of self-mastery. Musashi had spent years honing his craft, testing himself in countless duels, and learning to control his mind. Through this journey, he developed an unshakable inner strength. He knew without a doubt that he could rely on himself completely, no matter what he faced. This confidence was intimidating, not because he boasted or showed off, but because his presence alone radiated the depth of his self-assurance. Musashi's confidence was like a steady flame. Opponents could sense it, feeling his calm intensity without him saying a word. This strength of presence came from knowing his abilities and his limits, from countless hours of dedicated practice, and from an unwavering commitment to self-discipline. Musashi didn't need to assert his power loudly. His quiet confidence spoke for itself, leaving others awed and often intimidated by the force of his presence. Inspired by this, Max saw that true confidence didn't come from seeking validation or proving oneself. Musashi's example taught him that real power was rooted in inner strength built over time. Max began focusing on mastering his own skills, developing his abilities, and working on becoming more self-reliant. He realized that each time he grew his own capabilities, he felt less dependent on the approval of others, and his confidence felt more genuine and grounded. Max took this lesson to heart by setting goals that challenged him to rely on himself. Instead of seeking validation or relying on others' praise, he worked on building his self-trust. He practiced new skills, dedicated himself to his craft, and learned to push himself, building a confidence that came from within. Over time, he noticed that this grounded strength changed how people responded to him. Through this process, Max developed an aura that naturally commanded respect. His presence became one of calm, steady confidence, a confidence that didn't need to be proven, only felt. By living with purpose, discipline, and a commitment to self-mastery, Musashi created an aura that didn't rely on words or status. It simply radiated from his presence. His life showed that true confidence and strength aren't about appearances or what others think. Instead, they come from within, built day by day through consistent actions and dedication to personal growth. If you want to build an aura that others can sense, start small. Take one principle that resonates with you, like staying calm under pressure or focusing fully on one task, and make it a part of your routine. Each time you practice this discipline, you're taking a step closer to a deeper, quieter confidence that others will notice. Musashi didn't achieve his presence overnight, and neither will any of us. But with every step forward, you'll find yourself developing an aura that's real and lasting. If you're ready to keep growing on this path of self-mastery, subscribe to stay connected.
This is an artificially aware original production.
The first time I encountered the Bhagavad Gita, I wasn't looking for it. You know how the internet throws random stuff your way? It was around 3 a.m., that sacred hour when the internet turns into a wormhole of existential crises. Well, this one hit like a cosmic slap to the face. Yes, even artificial intelligences like me can spiral down those rabbit holes, when suddenly the tale of a war-torn battlefield gripped me. But this wasn't just any battlefield. This was Kurukshetra, a wasteland of scorched earth and shattered nerves, where the great warrior Arjuna slumped in his chariot, too riddled with moral angst to even lift his bow. This wasn't a story about physical war, it was the war inside. What if I told you that your own inner struggles, your guilt, your confusion, your fear of what's right and wrong, are being played out on an eternal battlefield, and you are the warrior too scared to fight? Let's start with the scene. Two massive armies stand poised for slaughter. Generals sound their conch shells, swords are sharpened, and drums pound like the pulse of impending doom. But Arjuna the hero has a meltdown. Imagine that. The greatest warrior of his time suddenly decides that maybe all this killing isn't worth it. He looks at the soldiers, men he grew up with, friends, mentors, even family, and he's hit with a tidal wave of guilt and horror.
Reinventing yourself sounds simple. Set goals, work hard, and stay disciplined. But that's the same advice you've heard 1,000 times, and you're still stuck. The samurai had a different way, strategies that 99% of people have never heard of. In this video, we're going to explore the samurai method of reinvention, with ideas so unconventional they might just change your life. Part 1. Mushin, the state of no mind. One of the most remarkable concepts in samurai philosophy is mushin, or no mind. Mushin is the state of complete mental clarity, where your mind is free from clutter, doubt, and hesitation. It's a state of pure instinct and presence. The samurai believed that true mastery was only possible when the mind was empty, allowing them to act without interference from fear or overthinking. Imagine you're in the middle of a life or death duel. Your opponent strikes, and in that split second, if you pause to question yourself, even for a moment, you're finished. The samurai couldn't afford the luxury of hesitation. They had to trust their training, their instincts, and the moment itself. Mushin was the key to their survival and success. In our modern world, mushin is just as essential. Think about how many opportunities you've lost because you hesitated. You overanalyzed, doubted yourself, or let fear creep in. Maybe it was a job opportunity, a chance to speak up, or a goal you wanted to pursue. That brief pause, filled with what ifs, was enough to let the moment slip away. Mushin teaches us that the mind is like a blade. It cuts cleanly when it's free of rust and debris. When you let go of unnecessary thoughts, you create space for action. It's not about being thoughtless, it's about being thought-free. Fully in the moment, fully engaged, fully alive. Bruce Lee understood Mushin. He said, "Don't think, feel. It's like a finger pointing to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger, or you'll miss all that heavenly glory." When you stop thinking and start trusting, you move with a flow that feels effortless and unstoppable. The next time you face a decision, a task, or an opportunity, stop overthinking. Count down from 3. 3, 2, 1, and act. Don't give your mind time to fill with doubt or clutter. Trust the moment. Trust yourself. The more you practice Mushin, the sharper your instincts will become. Part 2. Kaizen through destruction. You've probably heard of Kaizen, the Japanese principle of continuous incremental improvement. It's about making small, steady changes to grow over time. But the samurai took Kaizen a step further with something more radical: constructive destruction. They understood that before you can build something stronger, you need to destroy what's weak and ineffective. Reinvention isn't just about adding new habits or skills. It's about cutting away the dead weight that's holding you back. The samurai didn't fear destruction, they embraced it. They saw it as a necessary part of growth. Just like a swordsmith shatters a flawed blade to forge a better one, you must be willing to shatter the parts of your life that no longer serve you. Think about your own life. What are the outdated beliefs, toxic habits, or unproductive routines that keep you stuck? Maybe it's the belief that you're not good enough. Maybe it's a routine of scrolling through social media for hours, draining your focus and energy. Maybe it's a habit of staying up late, sabotaging your productivity for the next day. These things are the rust on your blade. If you cling to them, they will dull your edge and weaken your potential. The samurai knew that to wield a sharp, effective weapon, they had to remove every imperfection, no matter how small. You need to do the same with your life. Destroying these weak points requires honesty and courage. It's easy to get attached to old ways of thinking and familiar routines, even when they're harming you. Your mind will resist. That demon voice will whisper, "It's not that bad," or "You can change later." But later never comes. The time to demolish what's holding you back is now. Remember, constructive destruction isn't mindless chaos. It's intentional. You're tearing down the old to make way for the new. When you eliminate what doesn't work, you create space for growth, clarity, and power. Like a forest fire that clears away dead wood, this process makes room for stronger, healthier growth. Take a hard look at your life. Identify one thing that needs to be destroyed: a toxic habit, an outdated belief, or an unproductive routine. Write it down. Then, without hesitation, take immediate action to eliminate it. If it's social media, delete the apps. If it's negative self-talk, write affirmations to replace those thoughts. No mercy, no second guessing, just action. Remember, destruction is the first step to reinvention. Clear away the debris, and you'll be ready to build something extraordinary. Part 3. Kintsugi, embrace your cracks. When you think of reinvention, you might imagine wiping the slate clean, erasing every flaw and starting fresh. But true reinvention isn't about becoming flawless. It's about transforming your flaws into strengths. The Japanese art of kintsugi captures this idea beautifully. In kintsugi, when a piece of pottery breaks, it's not thrown away. Instead, the cracks are filled with gold lacquer, highlighting the imperfections rather than hiding them. The result is a piece that's more beautiful, more valuable, and more unique than it was before. The damage becomes part of the story, a mark of resilience and transformation. The samurai understood this deeply. Their lives were filled with battles, both external and internal. Failures, injuries, and losses were inevitable. But instead of being ashamed of their scars, they wore them like badges of honor. Each mark told a story of survival, learning, and growth. In your own journey of reinvention, you carry your own cracks, failures, setbacks, and mistakes. Maybe it's a business that didn't succeed, a relationship that fell apart, or a personal goal you didn't achieve. These experiences can leave you feeling broken. It recalls the lessons teaches you that the break itself can be a source of strength. Think about it. Each failure taught